Tēnā koutou katoa. My pleasure to chair this panel, and what a great morning we had this morning. And I just thought I'd link this morning to this afternoon. I've got here an annual paper that's going to NZEI's annual meeting in 2 weeks' time, and I noticed the response to Damon's message about Pacifica peoples coming from many different islands and nationalities, and the conclusion of this paper ends with, and this is written in the voice of a child: from my perspective as a child of a Pacific nation, I have a question. Where are the education initiatives that respond to me, the Samoan child? Where are the education initiatives that respond to me, the Tongan child? Where are the education initiatives that respond to me, the Cook Island child? Where are the education initiatives that respond to me, the Tokelauan child, the Fijian child, the Niuean child, the Tupelauan child, the Kiribati child, and the Tahitian child? Where are the education initiatives that respond to me, the New Caledonian child? And I don't mean the statistical data required for government targets. I mean the programs that are about me, consulted and developed with me in mind, and provided in and through my home language. I mean the programs that are provided by teachers that know me and see me this child of the Pacific. This afternoon, we had a great, well, this morning was great. We examined where we're at, some of the threats, some programs that work well. We articulated the aspirations we have, and what we need to, and that we need to acknowledge the successes we already have. This afternoon, we wanted to look forward. If we believe in a quality education public system, and I think system is really important, what is the way forward for all of us that acknowledges all of us? What does every one of us have to take away, and what does every one of us have to take away today to do to help that happen? So it's my pleasure to introduce, we've already met John O'Neill and Martin. I'd like to introduce Barney Benaya from Te Pipiri Mananui o Ngā Taha o Maui, which is the Māori AC for Auckland NZEI. Sue William Zero, MP for Mangere, and we've also got Alfred Naro, who is the Nationalist MP, and Lydia Salisi, who represents the O2 local board. And so I'd like to open up, please, with John, if you'd like to introduce.
I'm hanging around just to listen to me again. Okay, what can we do? I've got a list of bullet points here, and they're all evidence-based, and I think that's the important thing that came out of the panel discussion this morning for me, that people were talking about things that had been tried and had been shown to work for some children and some communities, and the issue is how do we extend those practices to all communities. First one is the most obvious. The strongest correlation between circumstances and ultimate educational achievement is to do with poverty. We know that we have between a fifth and a quarter of our children living in poverty. Unless we address poverty directly, what education can achieve is relatively limited. And we mustn't allow politicians to perpetuate the lie that it's the quality of teaching that's the only thing that makes a difference. Teachers and communities can do a lot, they can't solve poverty. So we need education solutions to education problems. We heard from Gil and others that you need wraparound full service schools. Particularly for disadvantaged communities, you locate the services they need where they're easy to access. So Ant's message was about wrapping support around individual kids, within those schools, but we also need government to accept that we need to wrap around the sort of social and health services that kids need to be able to access close to the school. The evidence is that we need smaller classes for kids in disadvantaged circumstances. The fact that on average it doesn't make that much difference whether you have slightly larger or slightly smaller classes is irrelevant. The evidence is that particularly for kids who are most likely to disengage and to drop out, it does make a difference. So that raises the difficult question of whether we put additional resources into lower decile communities in order to make classes smaller so that it's easier for teachers to do the work that is more challenging in those circumstances. Politically that's difficult, educationally it's a no-brainer. We need differentiated instruction. So again, that's difficult in a small village like New Zealand, where we have to challenge the notion that certain programs work for all kids. And I'll just raise the one spectre of reading recovery. Reading recovery works brilliantly for kids who need a little boost. It's absolutely hopeless for kids who haven't even got the first space. And we have lots of kids coming into the education system for the first time who haven't had the benefit of those early family and community experiences that provide the necessary basis for succeeding in education. We need highly qualified teachers. The most successful system in the world is the Finnish one, where you need a master's degree in order to become a teacher. Even the KIP program, the Kids in Prison program in the United States that Mr. Banks and Miss Isaacs are so strongly promoting, most of the KIP schools advertise not just for qualified teachers, but for teachers with additional qualifications in teaching kids with special educational needs. So it's a myth that it's charter schooling per se that works. What works is having highly qualified teachers. There's good evidence for that. The Australian and New Zealand governments and some international corporates have pointed to the Grafton Institute report out of Australia. A private think tank has produced a report comparing high-performing Asian school systems with ours. They say they have higher class sizes. What they forget to say is they have fewer contact hours. If you're a teacher in China or Korea, you will teach a maximum of 15 to 17 contact hours per week, compared with 20 to 21 in New Zealand and Australia, and up to 30 in the United States. The reason they spend fewer hours teaching is that they spend more hours practicing, talking and thinking about and planning teaching. Imagine what a difference it would make for you if you had several further hours a week in order to plan what you were going to do, practice it, and to get feedback on whether or not it's working with the kids in your classroom. Direct poverty and welfare support needs to go into schools. So again, in Finland, every kid is provided with a free hot lunch every day. The Prime Minister is quibbling about whether or not to have emergency food packs in schools. Imagine the stigma associated with being a kid who's given an emergency food pack because your parents are deficient, as opposed to seeing it as a right to have the food, the fruit and the breakfast that you need at school. There is really good evidence that high quality early childhood education makes a difference, as opposed to the approach that we are far too often in this country of the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. We need a homogenous system because the evidence is that if you have a homogenous education system, it removes all the gaming that richer people and professional people take advantage of in order to get better gains and more advantages for their kids. That's not to suggest that a homogenous system is some sort of Stalinist grey education system. We know from the state system that we have that it's perfectly possible to build in diversity to meet the needs of different cultural groups, different socio-economic groups, but it's a state system because things are provided as a matter of right, not just on the basis of charity, philanthropy and corporate self-interest. Two more. The evidence from the United Kingdom, England in particular, is if you strip out intermediate level support, then you leave school communities to their own devices. And one of the strongest messages from tomorrow's schools is that If you leave boards of trustees to their own devices, the ones who are going to struggle are those in disadvantaged communities. Because boards of trustees in today's environment need to game the system, and to do that you need lawyers, you need accountants, you need people with professional skills. And the evidence is that somebody has to put those into the system, and my argument would be that it's government's responsibility to provide much more support to boards of trustees in local communities so that they can do their job rather than blaming them for not being able to work the system and putting commissioners in instead. Lastly was Jackie's comment from this morning, which I think is a wonderful message to us all. If kids are going to succeed in the system, they need to see stories of kids like them succeeding in the system. So as educators, our role is to ensure that the negative media messages are seen as a deliberate political ploy to blame the system, and our job as educators is to consistently tell good, positive stories of kids from Pacific communities, from Maori communities, from disadvantaged socioeconomic circumstances succeeding, because they do, and lots of them do, and if we tell those stories rather than the other ones, kids will see the state system as having something for them.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Martin, would you like to?
I guess what I was struck with over the day was, to a certain extent, a lot in common, but also a level of disconnect between the focus that people have, and that's sort of inevitable really. Laurie Hughes here, local principal, and he often says there's a little bit of truth in everyone's position, and there's something in that. And really, so it comes down in a sense to, so what is the direction? Where should energies be put? Should it be put more towards the structural issues, alleviation of poverty? Should it be put into exciting programs in classrooms, the sort of initiatives that we've been hearing about? And I think that really, to a certain extent, all of those are true. That we need the individual initiatives, we need a broad policy approach, and we need to work with particular kids in the ways that I talked about this morning. But one of the sort of key questions in a way that needs to come out of this all today, and sort of the people that talk about educational markets and schools, they talk about exit or voice. Do you, in a sense, abandon a situation where things are not going entirely smoothly and there are identified problems, or do you stick with it and try to make it better? And I would hope that if we're thinking about the public education system, that the way forward, I certainly see the way forward for all the sorts of reasons that have already been talked about in terms of charter schools and the problems with the charter school system. The way forward for me, very clearly, is voice within a quality education system. And I think when you're thinking about that question, it's really important that whoever is kind of posing that question of, should we exit or should we try and get voice, looks beyond their own particular little group, looks to the welfare of children across the country, but particularly those that are in low socioeconomic situations and the different range of ethnic groups. For any one particular group to kind of take itself off because it sees an advantage in it, may be all very well, but if overall it's undermining the public education system and making things difficult for the children of other people, it's really not acceptable. So if it's voice, what do we need to be concerned with? Well, there's some very clear threats out there, I think, from current government policy. There is the league tables and, the issues that are going to come out of that, and that needs working on. There's the charter schools. There's inequalities of resourcing, and it's really, I'm harking back here, I guess, to what John's been talking about. And at the same time, what I also heard about a lot this morning was about aspirations. particularly around language, different Pacific languages, and culture, and what the school system can do for Pacific peoples. And that's what really needs to be worked on too, I think, is what can happen within the existing quality public education system to meet the aspirations of Pacific people. So that's where I would leave it, exit or voice, but I would very clearly come down on the side of voice, of trying to improve the quality public education system for all the reasons that have really been talked about today, and again picking up on what John was talking about. Thanks.
I think what John and Martin have pointed out here is about what is good about our system and the things we have to protect, and how we do need to stick with the system we've got and make it better. And this is very pertinent today when we see what's happening in Christchurch as we speak, with an experiment being imposed on a whole area and a disestablishment of the system that we had as an experiment. What I'm going to move to now is our three political panellists to comment, and I'd like to start with Silencio, please.
Mana e ngā iwi, e ngā reo, e ngā hauwha, e ngā karangara maha, e ngā koutou, tēnā koutou ki o tātou katoa. O te manatu o lea ua sawihi whakuna manu tātou mawhitanga. I le paia manu maru a whankapoto. I a liki matamata i whai a aonga, le pasenga o le aonga. Ia e meise fōi vāenga ese tangata atu moto e Pasifika. Tupu mai e wā whankapoto. Ia o te whamaru wa, ka koe mai ese tau whai atu se mātou tau whai nā. E tu sai mane. I apologise, but it's really important for me to go through that process of protocol, to acknowledge, firstly and foremost, our mana whenua, the people of this land, to acknowledge the many teachers who are here, to acknowledge NZEI for putting up this conference here, to acknowledge our principals, our educators, our speakers, and particularly all of you who are persevering to the end of this day. So I do want to pay my respects, and I want to acknowledge also those who are here at this table. I want to also acknowledge my colleague, the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta, who's here all the way from Waikato, and thank you for being here as well. So later on, if you've got any questions, she'll be the person answering. I want to begin by reinforcing what I've heard today and the importance of the messages that I've gotten with Martin, referring to national standards and league tables as, well, my colleague Nanaia calls it blunt tools that discriminate, and really they have nothing to do with our learning. And the achievement outcome that we seek for our children. John, in talking about charter schools, says they're a good label for right-wing ideology. I agree with that. Glad that my friend Alpha's here. And they offer more choices to those families who have more money. That's the simple way that I see charter schools. And the successful US model is called no excuses model, aka kids in prison. And you know what? That's what a lot we hear from our young people, that's where they're heading, because that seems to be the message that we're getting from this particular government. And why on earth would a government want to provide unqualified teachers for impoverished communities? I'll tell you why. Every school should be well funded and provide high quality education. Education, as one of the speakers said, allows a child to know they don't have to live in the world that they are born in. Schooling for our children is to ensure that they get a sense that they can take charge of the 21st century and not simply become a nut and bolt of that 21st century. This is the reason why I believe that we are going down the pathway that we're going down at the moment. It's been said that government's ideology is not logical. It is idiotic policy that just doesn't make sense. And the reason being is it is cold, calculated, deliberate, right-wing ideology to reduce social spending and move the country into the mindset that if you don't succeed, it is your own fault. Not the government's responsibility, it's your personal responsibility. That's what this is all about. It is shifting the mindset so that you and I believe and our kids believe that we're at the situation that we're in because it's our own damn fault and not the government's fault. So guess what? These policies are to blame you, to blame the principals, to blame the schools, to blame the parents, to blame the students, everybody except for this national government. Said that the labour market is a risky place and that we should not obsess about the reading, writing, arithmetic as they are only three of a range of basic skills children need. That's true. For Pacific, there is another extended group of skills that we demand of our children. We do this at home. We do this in our churches. Those basic skills are not necessarily acknowledged in the mainstream education that we currently have. The question is asked, what will we do about it? What will the education system do differently? That question is more born of really the frustration that many of us feel. But it's also born because of the way this environment has been created by this government. And I agree with the answers that have been put that it is a cynical manipulation by the acting national government to feign concern for the Pacific. And I agree with the speaker who said that that is extremely toxic because it takes us away from the focus about achievements for our children. Gil provided a very true scenario of what not only happens in his school, but of many of the schools in South Auckland. We all know the statistics. We all know the poverty because of lack of jobs, the low-paying jobs. That has an impact on the livelihood and the ability of our young people. And I agree with his question. Despite this, so many of our kids still achieve, but that doesn't get the front page of the media. I want to say that poverty is the modern scourge and is a national shame, and really we have to be able to collectively stand together to fight that. I want to say that I enjoyed what Phil said about a simple way of really trying to measure where our kids are. And most teachers, most parents have a good idea without going through any report cards, but simply what can our children do, what can't they do, and where do we need for them to improve upon it. Clint made a point that I want to re-emphasise. And at the end of the day, I think we need to go away feeling quite positive. We're blaming each other because of the environment that's been created for us. And really, we've got to stop that. But in stopping the blaming game, we shouldn't stop asking the hard questions. And the hard questions are, as Clinton said, what is the quality information that parents need in order to support and assess where their child is? I like Ant who said, if a teacher doesn't have hope for our kids, you shouldn't be allowed to teach our children. And I'm sorry, but I think that's very, very true. Often, if a child doesn't feel that they are valued and supported, how on the heck then are they going to be able to really move to where we want them to move? Policy that value Pacific cultures and languages is something that Debbie brought up from early childhood education through to college. We have 3 universities that provide degrees in Pacific studies or in Samoan language or Tongan language, etc. But there is no pathway for them to get there. And so if we're going to adopt Pacific languages as an integral part of our New Zealand curriculum, then it needs to be from early childhood education to college, and not simply ad hoc as it is currently at this point in time. I want to say that Jackie Passy, I want to re-emphasise the point that she made of student-teacher relationships are important. They are critical in terms of our Pacific children. And parents don't know how they can support their children. You have to imagine that many of Pacific parents have not ever been able to go to university, let alone intermediate school. My dad left at intermediate 1, Form 1. And so that's as far as this education is concerned. But as a labourer, as a taxi driver, he put through 9 children through education. And so I give him credit. But the point has to be made that whilst we value education, many of us have not experienced what that means, what higher education is, although we keep pushing our kids towards that. We expect them to be doctors and lawyers because that's what everybody tells us. And so we do need support in terms of supporting kids, recognising where we can help our own children. I want to acknowledge Lau Wafioma Tosusulu and say to you, yes, nobody forgets a good teacher, and the teacher that was very influential in my life was Wayne Smith, a hippie of a man, long hair, long beard, and the bell-button jeans, but he taught us to be critical of what was in the paper, to write letters to criticise Robert Muldoon at the time, and that we did. And every day in our classroom, he got us excited about what was happening around our community. So if you know where Wayne Smith is, I want you to pass on my gratitude to him. The point that Tosusulu made, after 10 years away in US, living in, he thought things would have been improved in New Zealand. And he says that it's become worse. And I suppose we all know this as well. So if we know the problem, it's up to us really to come up with a solution. And I'm so frustrated because the solution has been in this room. We've discussed it, and I've been to so many meetings where we talk over and over, and it seems like we're going round in circles. And so we do need active role modelling. Teachers and schools get the blame, but they don't get the credit. And I'd ask you, where you've got things to celebrate, you should be inviting your local politicians so that they see it and recognise it. Don't necessarily have to put their picture in the papers, but get them to acknowledge what's happening. I want to finish off simply by saying that from a political perspective, our party believes strongly that children have the right to the best education from their first day to school to their first day on the job. Education is a priority for Labour, and we make no apologies for committing funding to it because we see education as an investment and not as a cost. That aligns perfectly with my own aspirations as a Pacific person and for what I want for our community. I want to say to you that if Pacific children of today succeed, we all know the reports and the changing demographics. New Zealand depends on these young people in the next 20, 30 or 40 years. I also want to say that equality isn't about treating everybody the same. Equality is about recognising our differences and respecting those differences. And because, I mean, I'm not only a New Zealander, but I'm also a Samoan. I am different from you. I'm not better or worse than you are, I'm just different. I learn differently. I appreciate and value other things which might be different from your values and your point of view. But I am firmly, despite that heritage, I am firmly here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is my home. And whether you like me or not, I'm not going to go away. Our children aren't going to go away. We bury our dead here, our children are married here, our sons and daughters, the beautiful and the handsome, are marrying your sons or daughter. Some of them may not be so beautiful. The reality is That's the new group of New Zealand leadership that is being created, being born. And so if we are wanting to prepare them for the 21st century, we really can't keep adopting that our education system, whilst yes, there is some good in it, but we do need to look at ways of improving it. I have to say, and I hope you don't take this in the wrong way, this is the Samoan in me saying, the New Zealand education system is based primarily on a Pākehā point of view. And I want to say to you with the greatest respect, I'm a New Zealander, I am not Pākehā, and I have a different point of view. I have a vision for the future of this country, which is about all of our communities, all of our children achieving and doing well, even though they might be different. And so, what is the village that we've talked about? It is you and I, it is the politicians, it is the parents, it is the churches, it is the employers, which is another critical part of this whole equation that we need to get on board if we're really going to make a difference. Ia mai nose fua.
Thank you, Zed. I think that brings us to the point, you know, when we think about the curriculum, we've talked about that a lot today in terms of the subject matter, but we've also talked about bringing children up that are confident and connected and in an inclusive society, and how important, you know, that we value everyone and that we see education as an investment. So I'd like now to call on Alfred Nara to speak.
Kia ora tātou kātoto tōra mātou tītua. Greetings to you all as the first non-Samoan to stand here this morning. To all the other Pacifica that are represented that are here, but also to, we love our Samoan brothers and sisters as well, because we all are part of the same family. Well, obviously it has to be a political aspect that we launch into this, and I'm here today, but can I just say this? My father is Daniel Ngaro. He came from the island of Aitutaki, and he came here in 1955. My mother is Toko Kirionu. She comes from the beautiful island of Mangaia. She came here in 1956. They met each other at the Orange Hall. And the story goes is that my dad looked across, and you could see that my mum was looking at him, and he was a handsome man. But the truth is, as my mum said, my dad kept on chasing him, and she didn't want him. And eventually she gave him a dance, and then the rest is history. And years on, I became one of 6 children, born in 142 John Street. In fact, the old Pitt Street Hospital across from the YMCA. And so went to Richmond Primary School. PIC Newton is where we went as well. And then eventually at the age of 8, Mum had this vision and dream that everyone else was heading out south, went to the end of the motorway, and they were heading out south. My mum, being the mother that she was, said, I don't have to do what everyone else is doing. So she jumped on a bus, and she jumped on a Fono bus, because that's what they were back in those old days, and she caught a bus all the way out to West Auckland. Back in those days, she knew back then that you could use your child support payment as a down payment on your mortgage. So she went out there, she found a house in 42 Chilcot Road in Henderson. She went back home. My dad came back, and my dad was working for Franceworks. He was working on the wharfs. And as he came inside, my mum said this, "E ngaro, this is the plan. I'm going to take our children, all 6 of them, over to Henderson. We're going to live in this house. We're going to buy this house. Now you can either come with me or stay with your mother." So that's the one-headed tour. That's my mother, and that's my grandmother who we lived with. Also raised me until I was 7 as well. What she also said to me is always this: she had a dream that one day we would live the aspiration, the dreams of why we came here. We were the cleaners, we were the labourers. Why? Because after the Second World War there was a labour shortage, and so many of us, and for our, especially our protectorate nation relationships with Cook Islands, Tukalau and Niue, we had an automatic entry. We didn't have quota systems, so we came in and we assimilated, and in fact we adapted as well. The interesting thing is that I remember that my grandmother taught me the culture and the reo and the language. When I went back home in West Auckland, out to Henderson, this is what my parents said. Don't you speak the language, I'll slap your ears. Okay? ko te koe te reo, papa, you will speak English. It wasn't until I became an older man, and through my frustration and my anger, I said, why did you remove the aspect of the culture? Because out of our 6, there were only me that actually understood the language and the culture. And she said this, when they came across, they were told this in the orientation, if you want your children to succeed, teach them English and not your language. That's a very common story for many, many of our people as well. So we came here to the land of plenty, of milk and honey, and the reality is now in 2012, it's the land of Coke and chips. Because that's what it is, it's cheaper to buy Coke and chips than to buy a loaf of bread and a bottle of milk. So what has that told us? And why am I here today, standing here? So I became, at Henderson High School, the proud West, and Henderson High School was a state school. You know, we were like the glamour schools of King's College or Auckland Grammar, or Avondale, where Nick Tuatasi and the whole of them went to those flash schools. We were just a simple state school that we went to, and out of that, okay, I actually, what's called, became a Māori pre-apprentice. That's where I was, because they said, oh, you know, are you Māori? And he goes, yeah, bro. And look what happened. I became an electrician. I actually went to Don Hostel down in Epsom. I trained there, and it was an awesome time. Got qualified, and as I was doing that, but then I remember that my grandmother said to me this, one day you need to walk in the footsteps of your grandfather. And my grandfather was a minister in Oramatua, and so I had to go to theological college. And isn't it an interesting thing that even as an older person, even as Pacific, we say we were told to go there. But it's not that sense of saying that you were told like this, but it's like you were told like this. It was almost like an opportunity that's given to you. And so I went to theological college, Bible College in New Zealand, my wife and I, and our kids. And we went through there, got qualified, and then we came and pastored and also set up a trust over here in Panmure and Tamaki. Went through that journey, and we did a whole lot of work in community. I became involved in the Board of Trustees because I felt that was important to do this. So I've been on the Board of Trustees for 20 years. I've been through 6 eras. We've seen one school that's been closed in our area as well. Been involved in schooling improvement that happened in our area. And the interesting thing is, you know, here's schooling improvement to make a difference for our schools, and we said that, right, don't you think that it would be a good thing if we all work together as schools? Well, yes, we'd all nod against that should. It took us nearly a year and a half to actually sign the MOU between all schools in the Tamaki cluster. We set up what's called Tamaki Achievement Pathways, which is to try and find a way that we could work together. But here's the challenge. We had this meeting where there were school principals and boards of trustees. And a principal stood up and said this, I don't think the parents of this community really care about these kids. Now I'm going to tell you this, if it wasn't for the fact that we were trained and learned, that guy would have had a spell or that coming out from somewhere. Sorry, that's the Samoans, I mean, but guaranteed, well, let's just say this, the guy only lasted in the job for the next 3 months and then he moved on, okay? But there's a perception also too from the inside of the system about who we are. And can I say this, changes need to happen all the way through. It's not only political, it's not only families, but it's also teachers and principals. Because as a Board of Trustees, I can tell you this, some of the attitude of our teachers and our principals needs to be challenged as well. And so when we talk about a system, yes it is. Challenge us as politicians, absolutely. As local boards. But also challenge the system too of teachers. The pedagogy of teaching that needed to change. It took Russell Bishop to begin his research to tell us actually relationships between a teacher and a child for Māori is absolutely important. Why did it take so long? And I tell you this, educational failure for Māori and Pacific is not a new thing. It's not a new thing. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everything that we do is perfect, and I think if we're all honest, everybody in our situation, nothing that we do is perfect. We should be challenged to change the things that need to be changed, but we all need to be challenged in that space as well. Can I also say to you this, I also know for our own parents, and this is a Pacifica Fono, and one of the things that I think that as Pacifica people that we need to do, sometimes we need to have our own Fono. Just us, where we close the doors, we shut the curtains, and we no more romancing the stone about Pacific, because I can tell you the reality, when there are visitors in the room, we talk differently. We protect the patch, absolutely. We are Pacific. How dare you touch us? How dare you say there's anything wrong about what we do? I've got to tell you this, I know there are things that we do in our community that we are ashamed of, but we don't speak up enough about it. There are issues about the families that we said, there's huge amounts of issues there, there's poverty, we know that those issues there. But if we don't help other people, ourselves, face the truth of our reality, then we will never change. So the truth of our reality is what we need to begin to ask to all of us in the system. And it firstly needs to start with us. So I'm a parent. I have 4 children who've gone through a state system. And I need to ask myself, what am I going to do to help? And I remember that in our school, over at Point England Primary School, we had 50% parent participation. So what was our goal? To increase that. So in the next 10 years, we managed to do that, where we got up to 85 to 90% participation. That was our responsibility. We also challenged the school in teaching. We said you can't keep teaching our kids the way you are because it isn't improving. So we challenged them as well. When we were part of schooling improvement, here's the thing that disturbed me the most, is that there were schools that were getting funding for Māori and Pacific funding for schooling improvement. The research was actually put together, and then we had to come back to bring the results. When they brought back the results for Māori, they had all the stats so they could measure a baseline and begin to project where there was growth and where there were peaks and troughs inside of that approach and what the trends were. Guess what happened when they came to Pacifica? The information and the data was so unclean that the researchers could not make a baseline to measure from. And they just gave all sorts of different excuses. So I stood up at the end of that meeting, and my witness is Tuisula Brown from Auckland Girls Grammar, because she was there. And I said to them this, you know, it's really interesting that for Māori you are mandated to stand up and to make sure that you're accounted for. But when it came to Pacific, you were not accounted for. And these are schools right throughout that had mainly Pacifica students. Why are you not being accountable for the data, for the responsibility that you have, for the funding that you were given? And you made some lame excuse that you weren't able to. Well, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. So we missed out on 3 years of schooling improvement data that would have given us at least a baseline to begin to measure. We didn't get it. We didn't get it. So here's the thing I want to finish off and begin to say this. We need to have our own conversations. Governance needs to be improved for our own people. You know, the thing is that you can contract in a lawyer or an accountant, but what you can't contract in is you and I that have a connection to our communities. Do you know how hard it is to get into the Niuean community? You've got to be a Niuean with Niuean mahani. To all those Niueans out there, you know what mahani means. It means character and nature, right? Okay? Because Niueans have a quirky sort of a particular way of doing things, right? My wife's Niuean so I'm allowed to say that. You know, and so what I'm saying is this, we don't tell our parents that you are important in your role of boards of trustees. Because your connection is greater than a lawyer or an accountant or an engineer can ever have. That stuff you can contract. What you can't contract is the ability to engage and to motivate and to mobilise our people. That's why we need them on boards of trustees, and we need to equip them better to be able to do their job as well. The system at the moment sets them up to fail. They get isolated, they get on their own, and they don't get enough support to do what they're doing as well. So I think that's another part of the process that needs to happen as well. Just quickly on league tables, it is a very controversial issue. Can I say that when you think about right across other sectors, in health went through a really interesting process where it actually forced them to look at what they were doing in their performance, what that has done to health, and according to the Ministry of Health and so forth, that's improved the ability to be able to perform. Now, all I'm saying is that maybe the system needs to be looked at, but whatever it is, we need to find a better way to improve. Lastly, I just want to say to you this. So it's really interesting that I stand here today. My father was a labourer, my mother was a cleaner all her days. God bless her heart. And God bless the cleaners. I won't say God bless spotless, I say God bless the cleaners. And, you know, it's really interesting because when I was asked to go into politics, I never wanted to go into politics. In fact, I was really happy doing what I'm doing. And someone said, why'd you go in it? And I said, because my wife told me to. And it's the truth, she did, she told me to. She said, you should go and do something with your life. And I thought, geez, I thought I was doing a whole lot of stuff. But, and then I was asked to go in and I said, well, why would I go into this place and be here where I am? I went to go and see my dad. And my dad said to me, I said to Dad, what should I do? And he said, well, who's asking you? The National Party. And he goes, scratched his head. And then he said to me, you know, son, when I look back in some of the choices that I made, I realised that sometimes there was blind loyalty. And I said, okay, so what would you do, Dad? And he said, I would look now for vision, for values, and for leadership that will take us ahead. Doesn't matter where it is, but things will change. So look for vision, values, and leadership. And if in your heart you can trust that, then you go for it. Can I say this? We're evolving and we're changing. You know, I want to respect Sir William Sewell. You know, there was a time in which, you know, we said that there were one political party that we always voted for. And I'm not going to make this that you should vote for National, because I know anyway you won't. I'm making any political speeches. I'll just be lucky to get a live outside to make that. But can I say this? What we don't talk enough about for our Pacifica people is the evolution and change of our culture. Because people, we're changing. The face of us is changing. And what we don't do enough about is how we're going to change with them. What do we need to be doing in their change? We don't have conscious conversations about change. All we do is react when something happens. And we go, oh, you can't do that, why? Because that's the way we've always done it. And you know what happens? All of a sudden, eventually, it overtakes us. And so if we're not going to be intentional about the changes, irrespective of where we are and what we do, then change will keep trolling along and it'll run us over every single time. And we become the casualties of the future rather than the people who have an intention for the destiny for us and for our children as well. I'm just one part of that change, whether it's good or bad. And you may say to me, well, I get Jerome Mickey keep telling me, you're in the wrong party. You know, besides all of that, the fact is, when we go above that, we are people. Our children are our children. And if we can find a way to exist and find our way to move through the difficulties, the differences of opinion, they're the ones that we want to make sure that we give them the best future as well. I'm committed to coming to meetings, not just meetings, but to ways in which we can work through issues, advocate for some of the changes that you may be saying that we need to have. I don't make any promises that we'll actually get them through, but I'm here today because I think that it's important to be present, to hear the issues, and ensure that our children succeed in the future as well.
Thank you for that. I'm going to ask Lydia Sosini to speak now. Lydia is a representative from the Mangere and Otahu local board, and I think it is important for us to think about where local government sits in education.
Salafalava, my name is Lydia Sosini. I'm going to move you as the audience into Auckland Council, into a local level. You've heard from the left, you've heard from the right. So in reality, I'm here today as a representative of Auckland Council. When the mayor is not available, it goes down the pecking order. Then the councillor is not available, then the chair is not available. So I am here today as a representative from Mangere, Otahu Local Board, and I'm just going to have a little bit of a speak about what we're doing in the community, and also how education is a key priority for Mangere Otahu Local Board. There are 7 of us that have been elected, and next month we would have been here under the new Auckland Council structure for 2 years, and next year there's going to be another election. So under the Auckland Council, you have probably in your daily busy lives, you would have seen the mayor talk about the Auckland Plan. The Auckland Plan is a 30-year strategic vision plan. Underneath that plan sits what they call area plans. Area plans are for the 21 local boards, and I sit on one of those local boards, and my portfolio is transport. The reason why I'm giving you all this information is so that you can make the correlation between what the work that I'm doing under the Auckland Council with the work that you're doing, raising our young people and providing the opportunities in the education sphere. So I just really want to talk quickly about the Auckland Mangere Otahu Area Plan, which is in draft form. This booklet here, even if you don't live in Mangere Otahu, this booklet here talks about what we are doing this month. We have been working on this plan, area plan, which is an aspirational plan for the next 30 years in Mangere and Otahu. So it's looking at key moves, it's looking at transformation, it's looking at our environment. Why is our environment becoming so important? what is happening in the discussions of the political speak at the moment, discussions about water. Who owns the water? So I'm going to just elaborate that this particular document here is in the public engagement phase, which finishes in 2 weeks. And part of that is how do we move forward in terms of education? Now, we've been doing road shows in terms of the local board, in terms of the working party group. And we have been to 3 different community groups in Māngere and Otahu. And a lot of our young people are either disconnected or disenfranchised, or telling us that Auckland Council is not doing their job by providing open spaces. When they come out of the learning institutes where they are, or they're not even engaged, they don't have anywhere to play. They don't have any money. They can't catch the bus because the buses are disconnected. So we've been listening to the different themes that have been coming out of our young people. A lot of people from Māngere Group, one of the roadshows that we had there, are very concerned about what's happening in the Manukau Harbour. There's a lot of focus on the Waitemata Harbour. There's not enough focus on the Manukau Harbour. What is Auckland Council doing about it? If you are a teacher or a principal or an educator and administrator at school, we have a lot of problems in terms of parents dropping their kids off at school. Parents like to drive up to the school gate, park on the yellow line, double park, triple park, whatever, and pick up your children. How safe is that? It's not safe at all. So the conversation in the local board that we are having with one of the CCOs, Auckland Transport, is how do we educate our parents who are very diverse that you have to park at least 2 kilometres away from school, get out of your car and walk your child safely to that school. The other conversation that we're having is around council-owned facilities. Non-profit groups or community groups are wanting to use facilities like this. They either can't afford to pay the fee to use it on a frequent basis, or they've got some other issues and they can't get access into a community facility. The churches are raising a number of key issues in terms of the district plan, which is now going to be called the unitary plan. The unitary plan is the legislative framework that allows you to do certain things on your property or in your environment. So for some of our churches who are no longer allowed to be in residential areas, they have to be in the light industry identified areas. So there's different zonings for different activity. So I guess why I'm highlighting a number of things is because whilst we are sort of invisible sometimes from an education perspective, in actual fact, when you carry out your activity, guess who you have to talk to? Auckland Council. So one of the things that I want to encourage, and then I've heard, when I was listening to Dama Toisu and I was listening to John O'Neill and Liz Morgan on Monday for the charter schools, I was also provided a submission on Wednesday for the bilingual ECEs. Through the week I've been listening to different conversations. How does Auckland Council, how do the Auckland councillors, how does the local board actually sit in a room like this? And you know, it's not about us speaking, it's about us listening. It's about us recognising what type of investment, what type of conversation, what are the key questions that we, in those roles, have to ask about infrastructure, about education, about the relationship in our communities. The only other thing I wanted to ask is, has there been a clear definition about community? Because to me, as a community advocate, community means a lot of things. And sometimes when you're working in a school environment, which I do as a trustee, I want to inform that many of our educators speak a language. And I'm not talking about Pacifica languages, I'm talking about language as in, that's your language and I really don't comprehend it. Especially when you're talking about subjects, when you're talking about assessments, when you're talking about a number of things. I, as a trustee in my role, have had to learn in the last 5 years what is important to our Pacifica parents. And I tell you what, community, Pacifica parents, like I've heard our politicians speak, Pacifica parents really do know their children. We may not have the academic speak, but we do know they can't read, or they can read, or they can't write, or they can write. So I guess I just wanted to, as the representative from Auckland Council, I thank you for the very short time, but I just wanted to be here to acknowledge NZEI for the invitation, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Lydia. And I think that point about communicating is just so important.
Welcome everyone. Again, I'm standing between you and something. This time it's the door. It's more dangerous. But I did want to just draw on some things I've heard and help us reflect. I missed the first session in the morning, so I'm sorry about that. But I was particularly struck with the work of Professor Thrupp, who gave us a list, and I think it's a list that probably everyone agrees with. Right? It's a very compelling list, and it makes perfect sense about how we could go forward from it. And I encourage us all, maybe we'll circulate that, and we can pay some attention to it. But I think what we need to bring from that is what we do on Monday morning. What is the next thing we do? Not just how do we envision a 10-year future. And I guess part of that comes out of something, although we've seen some political to and froing, there's something energizing by the fact that everyone agrees on the primacy of education, on the liberative potential of education to liberate people from the constraints of their home, of their life, of their economic circumstances. And so that seems to be something we can draw together. You know, the Reverend Narwhal's story, he's a brother of mine from Glen Innes, was a story that's common in the Pacific community about how much education can change your life. Right? And it's something that I encourage you all to buy a specific magazine, because Reverend Narwhal actually recounts a relationship with his father very powerfully in the next month's edition. And I think what it's actually allowing us to see is how much that shared commitment and sacrifice towards education leads through to the next generation. And I've often wondered what happened to that drive. You know, it was an assumption we make, and one of the hidden statistical problems we see when people like me look at numbers a lot, or people like Professor Thrupp probably as well, notice is that it seems the people who do best in the New Zealand education system are actually disproportionately born in the islands. And the ones who our education system is letting down the most are actually the New Zealand born Pacific Islanders. And so I think that's really important to think as we take our next step, because it's pointing us to what the answers might be. Now I've seen many forums where we're turning to answers derived from traditional sources or the islands to answer problems that are actually much more specifically from New Zealand. And so we need to be attending to what actually suits the problem we're tackling. And I think what we've seen with Professor Thrupp's work and Professor O'Neill's is the presentation of a repertoire. Right? We need to have a repertoire. We can't just have one tool in our toolkit to solve this very difficult problem. So as we take our next step, think about, first of all, doing something, and we've got all sorts of examples of what we might do, but also thinking about what is the actual problem we're going to tackle today and how are we going to deal with it. I have another relationship here because Awhianga Sula is from the same village as me, and the Prime Minister just told us our village is full of uneducated idiots in Samoa. Which is in, those of you who know, that's South Tapuala. It's been in the news a lot in Samoa. Very unjustly we've been treated. But I think what that's recognising too is in this other journey of someone on the other side of Parliament actually resonates with, it's the same story. Right? And that to me is a reassurance that we're actually on the same page. But that's why also we have to be very, very careful as we take the next step what that will be, because it will be here for a generation.
predictably, I'm against charter schools. I lived for 10 years in Michigan, which is a state where the public education system has been devastated by charter schools, where my own school district, my wife is sitting at the back, we were about the last one sending our kids to the school who had a choice. And we loved that school. And it worked beautifully for us. But we realized, because everyone had told us not to send our kids here, send them to this charter school or that charter school. It's because they thought our kids were Mexican. And should go to the Mexican school, and we were sending them to the black school. Right. And this is the kind of system which will be so heavily gradated and separated out, we will be saddled with. As certain people are left with no choices and others get lots. And the people with no choices get schools with declining resources and opportunities. And so obviously I know everyone here agrees with me. But this is a battle you have to win. And so you better be prepared. We're all with you on that. Maybe not all of us. And he may be a Cook Islander, but he's also a Samoan, isn't he? And I'm also a Tongan for the same reason. I also do as I'm told. And I think Professor Thrupp had, some of the answers we're presented with are enormous. And the one we're tackling that can at least be advertised on radio is child poverty. And what I learned in the States is that it's fine to oppose child poverty, but if you speak up against adult poverty, you're some sort of leftist. But there are no children in poverty who aren't accompanied by adults in poverty. Last time I checked. And that is why this poverty issue has to be at the front of our work. And schools are one possibility, but they can't do it all. Like I was saying before, we're not equipped for it. But we have to do what we can. And I think, Reverend Nuttall actually reminded me of something that made an enormous benefit in all of our lives and would be a specific step forward, which was the capitation of the family benefit, which put tens of thousands of Pacific Islanders in their own homes before the family benefit was taken. And not just Pacific Islanders, Pākehā, Māori, everyone in the city. And so a return of the family benefit, and it's something that I know we're on the verge of raising again, but I think it's actually a good political step forward because child poverty is now utterable in public. And the family benefit, when particularly we're generating the families for this country, has to be something that is mooted again. And I think these kind of concrete steps, using these very neutral or apparently politically neutral claims for child poverty, are one of the ways forward. So, although at some levels the answers are now clear to us, we knew them before we walked in the room. Even if we don't know how to get there, we can see where we need to get to. And so what I guess the challenge is for us all is that sentence that begins like Sua and Reverend Nuttall have suggested. What am I going to do? Right? What will I do differently to make a difference? And that's, I think, a challenge, certainly for me, I've taken away from today, hearing you all and learning so much today, because I didn't have the answers, but I've got a few more now. But it's something that I think can take us all forward. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank all the panellists for their words of wisdom. We're all here for one reason really, and that's for our children and for our mokopuna. And that's what it's all about, and that's what we're all going to go out of here as our challenge has been put forward, and need to do something individually and collectively to make a difference.